Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? If there weren't a debt limit, could the federal government borrow as much money as it wanted? Tonight, over the legal limit and under arrest. Before the debt ceiling entered the realm of public debate, the phrase over the legal limit was usually associated with drunk driving laws. Most libertarians, I among them, believe drunk driving laws are unnecessary and unconstitutional. After all, there already are laws against careless driving and reckless driving, and an arbitrary blood alcohol content level set by a government bureaucrat who is driven in a government limo only opens the door for police to circumvent the Fourth Amendment. Drunk driving laws don't stop drunk drivers, and it's none of the government's business what the content of a person's blood is. But drinking too much can kill you, whether it's illegal or not. The situation with our statutory debt limit is similar. At its essence, the debt limit law is unnecessary. According to the Constitution, the Congress passes laws and appropriates funds for the enforcement of those laws. And then the president executes those laws and spends the money that the Congress has appropriated. A debt limit ought to be unnecessary because the Treasury ought to need money only for those things Congress has already appropriated. And Congress should not spend what the Treasury hasn't already collected. However, it doesn't work that way in practice. In practice, it's been nearly 3 years since the Congress met its constitutional obligations and passed a budget. Think about that. The Constitution of the United States requires the Congress to pass a budget every year, and it has not done so in nearly 3 years. Today's federal government spends money through regulatory agencies and gives away welfare in ways never envisioned by the people who wrote the Constitution. And previous Congresses have forced the present Congress to spend money that the government doesn't have. However, more important than the legal debt limit, whose increase is now being seriously questioned for the first time in history, is the fact that there is a real debt limit that is not contingent upon federal law. And that is the point at which the size of the debt consumes so much of the gross domestic product that it slows down and actually sabotages economic growth. Stated differently, Congress can write whatever laws it wants and borrow whatever it can borrow and spend whatever it can get its hands on. But Congress cannot make 2 + 2 equal anything but 4. It is bound by the same laws of economics that the rest of us are. And those laws dictate that when Congress's spending, when the government's spending exceeds private spending, economic growth slows. Governments simply cannot borrow their way out of deep debt burdens. They can only do so by living within their means. Well, what does this mean? It means that the federal government's total debt is almost equal to the total market value of the goods and services produced in this country by the private sector. That is bad. That is dangerous. Just like drinking too much booze is dangerous, whether or not there is a legal limit on your blood alcohol content. If you consume too much alcohol, you may not get arrested, but you might die. Similarly, whether or not there is a statutory debt limit, there is a very serious real economic limit to how much debt the taxpayers can tolerate, how much debt the economy can take. That limit has already been exceeded, and that has contributed to the present dismal economic situation. And raising the debt ceiling will make it worse. The economy is under arrest. It's been stimulated to death. It is now broken under the weight of all this unsustainable debt, regulation, and central planning. That's what hangs in the balance in this debt ceiling debate and vote. That's why the line must be held here. We hit our statutory debt limit in May, and trickery by the Treasury Department has allowed the government to spend with abandon for a few more months. But the real limit on how much debt our economy can absorb before it faces arrested development has already been passed. And if the popular Tea Party movement does not induce real change in Washington, eventually our economy will die. We have to cut the government's supply off at its source. It must borrow no more, or we will reach the point as a people when we have no more money to spend. We will find ourselves slaves to debt in the land of the free. Is that what you elected the government to do? Tomorrow on